Really didn't know much about what I was going to talk about today. It's been an interesting week, and I think I'll made me reflect on a lot of things, and I think I want to share some of that with you. Part of it is, I ran through real quick when I got here and picked out the music for today's service, and that song kind of hit me as, yeah, that's the right place to use that one. And I can't even remember exactly how many years ago it is, but it's close to 40 years ago when I first walked into a spiritualist church. And I knew that day that I was supposed to become a spiritualist minister. And my path kind of led me in a few different directions and stuff since then. And then about 15 or 20 years ago, I heard that song and knew that I needed to get back on my path, that this is where I'm supposed to be. And it's like, okay, I'll listen. You send me where you need me to go, and I'll do it. And I realized this recently that as I learned things, as I was given the information and as I gave the information out, I kind of stuck with that, and I stopped listening, I stopped learning. I know that a lot of people in this congregation look at me as a teacher or the teacher, that I'm the one that everyone comes to in here for the answers. And I realized some of my answers are kind of antiquated. They may only be 6 months or a year old, but the world changes so fast, and there are so many other things out there that you can never stop learning. I have two granddaughters. When the older one, Samantha, when she turned 14, I knew that I had to sit her down and explain to her that she was an empath, she was a psychic, that seeing dead people wasn't something the average person did. She was really just starting to explore all that, and I took her out and we sat down at a restaurant, and away from all the influences of her mother and family and everything, I explained all this to her, and I kind of took her under my wing, and with that, I kind of focused on her and getting her into this path that I thought that she was supposed to be in. And her younger sister, Alexandra, who is about to turn 18, I never really gave her any of this information. I didn't support her in any of this stuff. And she is just as spiritual, just as gifted, if not more so, than her sister, and I never saw it because I was too focused on her sister. I stopped paying attention, I stopped listening because I had my focus. And I don't know how Alexandra's path would be if I had been that much of an influence on it. Maybe I've been too much of an influence on Samantha, and where Alexandra's doing so well because she's been able to learn on her own without Grandpa, who knows everything, telling her everything. I've luckily got a friend in my life who challenges me constantly, and he reminds me that mine isn't the only way. And I don't know why I'm just coming to this realization so, suddenly all this, because Reverend Betsy and I used to travel everywhere together. We'd spend hours in the car, and I would learn so much from traveling with Betsy and listening to all of her stories and everything that, she's been through. And then we'd get to wherever we were going, and she'd tell me that she had learned just as much from me as I had from her. I always thought that Reverend Betsy knew everything. How could she learn anything from me? I need to put myself in that same position and continue to learn from everybody who's around me. I can't stop it at what I'm hearing from Spirit World or what I've heard from my previous mentors. They're children that I can learn from. Looking at things through new eyes and not blocking out the things that you think you already know it, so I don't need to listen to that anymore. I don't need to learn that. A good example of that I would guess that everyone in this room would be able to identify with a little bit. Okay. How many people have heard of John Chapman? Okay. He was born in a little town about 15 minutes east of here, 15 miles east of here. And when the United States started to spread west, he went with it because the only way to bring alcoholic spirits to the Western world was in fermented apple juice. If you wanted to get drunk on Saturday night, the only way to do that was to make apple cider and let it ferment. John Chapman headed west, brought his apple seeds and his saplings with him, planted orchards, and got everybody in the West drunk. Everybody loved him. And somehow they needed to clean up the whole thing, and the legend of Johnny Appleseed was born. Everyone knows who Johnny Appleseed is, right? So you can't always stop learning at what you've been told. There's often stories behind stories and many different stories all in the same one. You've got to look at it from all sides and see what there is to learn and how many different sides there are to everything. Everyone would look at a coin and say there's two sides to a coin. There's also that infinite little edge that has all of the stories inside it. I am blessed to have people in my life that challenge me to kind of look at the edge of that coin and the possibilities rather than just looking at one side or the other, or only allowing myself to look at what I've done and what I know and not continue to learn. So I would like to just challenge you all to listen to everybody, look at everyone as a teacher, and I would like to thank those of you who are in my life as teachers. Thank you.